drugs and speeding. Magistrate Brian Imabedi is still delivering judgment. He's accepted the testimony of most of the state witnesses as credible. Jub Jub's testimony was found to hold many contradictions. Imabedi said the two were consciously aware of school children walking along the side of Mdadlozi Road where the accident occurred. Now, for more on this story, we cross to our reporter Valdi Carlos, who is at the Protea Magistrates Court in Soweto. Good afternoon, Valdi. A guilty verdict for Jub Jub and his co-accused. What was their reaction to that?
Faith, they were asked to stand shortly before the verdict was handed down. Jub Jub clutched both his hands behind his back. There was a tick in his jaw, the tick we've seen the whole of the trial. And then Tshabalala just bowed his head as the magistrate read out guilty on count 1, guilty on count 2, and so he went. Of course, they were acquitted on only one of the counts, and that is failure to assess the victim's injuries after the crash. Magistrate found that the state didn't do enough to prove that count. Both of them kind of shell-shocked, didn't display much emotion, but there was a lot of emotion in the public gallery. We saw some of the parents collapsing. One of the mothers had to be carried outside. They gave her water. Paramedics were also there. We just saw 2 ambulances leaving. She didn't get in the ambulance. But of course you can understand there was a lot of emotion attached to this guilty verdict. It's been 2 years, and for the mothers, that moment was simply too much to bear.
You talk about the earlier atmosphere in court, Valdi. How are things at the moment?
Well, Faith, the matter has just been adjourned. I do understand that the state asked that their bail be revoked and that they be kept in custody until sentencing, which we understand will happen in November. After judgment, of course, there's arguments in mitigation of sentencing. That's due to happen later. It has adjourned now, but definitely an emotionally charged court 6 today. As the magistrate was reading out his judgment, and you could see which way it was going, because he was comparing case law, culpable homicide versus murder. You know, it was a shock decision by the MPA to charge both Tshabalala and Maarohanye with murder. And as the judge was going through this case law, he cited cases of drivers that had been found guilty of murder after a traffic accident. You could sort of see where the case was going, and you could just feel the atmosphere changing. Silent tears streaming down mothers' faces. There were moans, there were groans, and parents collapsing. Definitely emotionally charged in court 6 today.
Our reporter in the Protea Magistrates Court giving us the latest on that Jub Jub case. That was Valdi Carlos.